Hello everybody, this is Blossom from Tales Unfold, and in today's video we're going to talk a bit about another aspect of geopsychic stress, more specifically energetic imprints. What they are, how you can find them, and how you can deal with them, we're going to explore in this video. But before we start, if you like this kind of content, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. This helps my channel and so I can create more content for you. In my work as a house healer, I go through different sections and aspects that may have a detrimental influence or effect on you and or your family. And one of those sections that I investigate is energetic imprints. So let's have a look at what that actually is. Energetic imprints are energy patterns, detrimental in that case, that have been there, that are like floating in the ether or are imprinted on the land. They can be there for years, decades, centuries, or thousands of years, and it can still have a negative impact on you if you're sensitive to that and if it clashes with your own energy. So one of the headings that I investigate is harmful magic or curses. Now, when it comes to curses, I try to be a little bit careful because it is often related to a scam, right? You get a free tarot reading and then suddenly you have a curse on you, and that's not what I'm talking about. I also don't talk, for this video, I don't talk about the personal curses against you, against your person, but curses on the land that may have a negative impact on you. Now, there can of course also be a personal curse. That is not impossible, but it's probably not as often as, you know, some people want you to believe. So again, a bit careful with that. We're also talking about harmful magic and spell work maybe. So this has been done and is still be done in these days, but often so far I haven't found many cursed lands or harmful magic on a land, but what can happen from the older days, that a land has been cursed because of jealousy, rivalry, better farmland, you know, you had a bigger crop or whatever, right? And so somebody might have cursed this land and you still feel the impact, even if the curse as such is not really active anymore. Often curses, depending on how they have been constructed, again, that is a whole different kind of video if I would go into that in detail, so I just leave it at that. Usually you do have to feed into it that it keeps working. Not always, but again, we discovered that in another video. And so this impact, that bad vibe basically is still impacting you. And when I talk about harmful magic, that can be everything, right? That can actually be any kind of spell that had an ill intention, but it can also be any kind of magic. Let's assume, I give you an example here. So you had a previous occupant, the previous occupant of your home that you are now living in, dabbled a bit in witchcraft, or was a witch, did a protection spell. A protection spell on the self and on the surrounding, the land, the grounds around the home, right? A very strong protection spell against whatever. I don't want to say just negative influences, because what for the one can be negative can be good for the other. And that's exactly the point of this example. So let's say this person had to protect himself against the energy patterns of dandelions. Very silly example, but I think that will get my point across there properly. Because they react really bad to that, energy patterns cannot have it in their life, so did a protection spell on that. Now you move in and you would really benefit from that energy pattern of dandelions, right? So this is gonna be harmful for you, even if there was no ill intent from the other person. It can still have a detrimental effect on your person, on yourself, right? So you can see that the black magic, white magic, it's not really working well, because every spell you create, if there's anything, if you word it to have a personal gain from it, there will always be cause and effect, and you will have to live with the consequences, good or bad. Not to say you cannot do any kind of spell work or anything like that, but every spell has it's an action part, a reaction part, right? And so you just have to be mindful of that, how you word it and things like that. Even if I do protection around my home, if I would move out, I would lift everything, because I don't know if anything of that would be harmful for the next owners of this home. So that is harmful magic or curses. Now let's go to the next section. Consecrated ground. So this part is very self-explanatory, right? Once the ground, the land that now is your home is standing on, was sacred, held holy by either the church or was even declared sacred by older practices. Perhaps you are now residing at the place where once sacred pagan rituals were held. And if this space was never properly deconsecrated, you still have that energy constantly around. And some people are able to pick that up, or are just picking it up, even if they are not fully aware what it is they are picking up. And that can be, again, hundreds, thousands of years old. And the vibration of such a space is really high. To do a ritual, to perform rituals, or to meditate for a short time or anything like that, that's fine. But if you constantly live, work and sleep, especially sleep, on such a high vibration, that's not good for us humans, and it will have a detrimental effect on us. Another section is spirit lines. So spirit lines are really interesting to me, and it can get a bit more complex. Now, for the sake of this video, I try to simplify this a little bit. These lines are used by the departed to travel along. So you might wonder, why do spirits need pathways? Why do they need those lines? That's where it can become, where you can dive deeper if you want to. There are a few specific lines that could be brought into connection with spirit lines, like the corpse roads, for example. These are roads that often went to or from a church to reach the cemeteries. Coffins were carried by people or pulled in a car, often over long distances. Therefore, they also needed resting points. And at these resting points, they often spoke a prayer over the departed ones or sung hymns for them. And so you can say that spirits are drawn to that energy, right? And so they start following those path lines, those spirit lines, those pathways, those corpse roads. Sorry. In Germany, there was a belief in virtual paths called Geisterwege. Again, ghosts or spirit paths. Even though they were thought of as invisible, they linked to actual physical cemeteries. It was thought that those lines are always running in a straight line, over mountains, through the valleys, through the marshes, through the rivers. You get the point. And they also could run very close to a house or straight through a house. And those Geisterwege always started and ended at a cemetery, and therefore a road where spirits could thrive. And of course, there's also that connection since ancient times between Faery and the dead. Now, there is you can make a connection between those spirit lines and fairy paths in a way. However, fairy paths do not necessarily end or start at cemeteries. They can also be, fairies may use also spirit lines. Maybe the deceased, the spirits, use fairy paths, but it's still different. But we will get to that in another video more specifically what fairy paths are. What is important for you to know is if a spirit line runs through your home and the deceased, the spirits feel disturbed by you, or that there's a house, right? You might encounter or you might experience some poltergeist activity, or even maybe it smells different, or it's just a weird smell constantly in the house, or just at certain times of the day. This can also be, maybe there's not constantly poltergeist activity. This can be a moon phase, this can be a time of day, this can be seasonal. That's something you have to observe yourself. If you are not sure if a spirit line might run through your house, or if you have never done any kind of work like that, for spirit lines, I would suggest that you contact someone who has more experience with that to work with spirits and also to divert those lines, because you're not going to clear necessarily that line away. You don't make it disappear, but you just divert it, often just like above the house. Sage crystals and those things are not going to do the trick in this case. So again, maybe consider connecting with a professional. If you want to learn more about spirit lines and the history of it, and you really want to dive in there and have a look of what all the different lines are in different regions of the world, I could recommend you the book Spirit Roads by Paul Devereux. Now let's go to the next section. Emotional energy spots. Those are spots we humans really love to create, and we do so constantly. Whenever you experience powerful emotions, they basically just pour out of you and you leave them all around you, everywhere. And this can be also, this is not just a bad emotions, but it can also be joy, bliss, and excitement. However, those kind of emotions are much lighter, so they tend to float away more or less, right? They're just like, ooh. And emotions like anger, guilt, grief, and all that kind of rage, all that kind of stuff, they tend to be heavier. And yeah, well, they go deep down to the ground, and they're gonna have much more of an impact, and they remain in the energy field all around you. So let's assume you had a fight with your spouse in the kitchen, and it got really ugly, bad things have been said, and you never do this, you always do that, okay? So you probably left an imprint there. Both of you left an imprint. Now, you made up the next day, you talked about it calmly, you had a good discussion, everything is fine. You go back to the kitchen and suddenly, both of you, one of you, starts to get tense again. Don't really know what, nothing happened, everything was fine so far, but you pick up on that leftover, on that residue. You get tense and short again with your spouse, and the next argument arises. And this can continue over and over because you feed into it. So the initial emotional energy spot will either grow in strength, or you create more and more of them, and there are going to be a lot of them suddenly in your kitchen, and your kitchen doesn't feel good anymore. And if you never clear that away, well, there's a phenomena called the divorce house, right? Because those things are never cleared, and so even if somebody new moves in, they can even pick up on that. It can also be that you sit always on a particular spot in your home, your favorite armchair, but you worry so much about whatever, about work, about whatever it is, about your relationship. And you keep worrying and worrying. And that's also where you create an emotional energy spot. And every time you sit in there, you're gonna start to worry more. So you see the circle here, the vicious circle. It's a dilemma, right? Again, it's not about having those emotions that is a bad thing, or that you have to suppress that. That's not really the solution. It's just being aware of it, because then you have the opportunity to clear it away. So if you have an argument or a big fight with your partner, with your friend, with whoever is with you in the house, your kids, just be aware of it, and afterwards you clear the air, right? And you clear it away. So if you haven't seen my video yet with Clear Your Home, I would suggest you watch that, because I think emotional energy spots like this are actually quite easy to clear up. And with some of these suggestions I made in this video, you can actually really clear it up. Or again, if you are unsure, you can always contact somebody who is a bit more experienced. Now, another section is historical place memory, and that is something that I always get very excited about it. Not every time when I douse a floor plan I will pick something up, but when I do, then I'm really excited to dive in and learn about the history. The history of a land carries so much emotions, informations, so many events are stored within the land. Unfortunately, the bad things that happened are stored there too. Again, over decades, centuries, thousands of years. And if you are quite sensitive to it, you might be able to pick up on those energies that are left over from big battles in the past, or a great injustice taking place, or whatever happened on that piece of land. This could be accidents, great acts of violence. This could be sacrifices that are still echoing through time and space. To really douse the history of a land, this might take some time. And it's maybe one of those things that you take a whole dowsing session for, where you ask all the questions about the dates, about what happened. I personally really like to use tarot cards with it as well, to get a broad understanding and a visual, to let my intuition guide me, and that the intuition is stimulated through visuals. So I really love to use tarot or oracle cards, depending on what I think is right at that moment. And so you can really get into it, and quite exciting, I think. Maybe not everybody is like that. And then the beauty of it is that many things you can Google afterwards. Don't go in there before. Get all the information you can, write it all down for yourself, and then you can Google afterwards with the dates, and maybe you find out quite a bit, and that that you were not so wrong with what you doused for. Now, then we also have the interdimensional place memory, which is quite similar to the historical place memory, but maybe not from this dimension. So I don't think that many pick that up, or that has a detrimental effect on that many, but I don't think it's impossible. If you're really a sensitive being, you might pick up on something that happened in another dimension, right? So this is like the historical place memory, just another dimension. It might not even be that far in the past, or in the past at all. It might just happen right now in another dimension, and you're picking that up. Then we come to portals. So when we talk portals, that might be a bit like from a science fiction movie, or we're thinking about other things. And for some, this is a bit out there. On the other hand, I think we talk about fairies, about ley lines, about interdimensional place memory, right? So if you're watching that, I guess you are pretty open-minded about those things. So portals. We open and create portals so much more than we're actually aware of, or that many are aware of. Whenever we do any kind of energy work, energy manipulation, guiding energy, whatever we do, we open up a portal. We open up that doorway between the worlds. This can be a tarot reading, your Reiki healing session, when I do a house healing job. If you do spell work, that's the time when you open up a portal. That in itself is not the bad part. You just have to remember to close them after you're done. So every time you did any kind of energy work, at the end of your work you say, and now I close all doorways and portals that have been opened intentionally or unintentionally. And so you can also visualize how you close those portals, and you can find probably a few ideas about how you can do that, or if you want to know more, just let me know. Portals can also be opened by spiraling into detrimental and harmful thought patterns. For example, maybe you're struggling with mental health issues, depression, or anything like that. Those thoughts patterns can also open portals. The same as Ouija boards. Again, they are not evil in itself, it's a board, right? It's just the way how we use it. Or video games, movies, they can open portals, especially when there's a lot of violence in the video games. It definitely, or horror or supernatural, it does open something sometimes, you know. I don't say every time you play a video game you will open all the portals, but it's possible. Again, we need to be mindful on how we use it and what we do and what happens when we do use it. So just being mindful and closing it. And before we close it, make sure that all the beings that might have crossed those portals, came through those portals, are being sent back to their own realms again. So you can see the energetic imprints of your home and grounds around can be quite fascinating. And it opened doors to a new understanding of how we interact with all that is around us. If you have any questions, or if you want to share your own experiences with geopsychic stress, you can leave a comment if you like. I would be really glad to read about your own experiences as well. So, and if you want to find out more about me or want to connect with me, you want to read a bit more about my work, you can find me on my homepage talesunfold.com. Thank you so much for watching, much love and bye.